Hello, everyone. My name is Emily. I'm a health services specialist here at Geisinger, and with me today is Amy Marie Pinkham. So, Amy is a registered dietitian, nutritionist senior here at Geisinger. Today on this webisode, we're going to discuss the importance of meal prepping and really how do we bring that into our busy lives, our busy routine. So before we get started, I just want to disclaim that the information is being provided to increase your awareness and is not intended to be medical advice. However, if you believe that you may have any medical conditions or have specific questions regarding your health, we ask that you please see and speak with your physician. So welcome, Amy, and thank you so much for being our speaker today.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I'm really excited to dive into today's topic of meal prepping. This is something I personally have always thought about doing, but I really don't know that much about it. So really hopeful we can all learn more today. So to start us off, I wanted to discuss the basics of what meal prepping is. So Amy, can you tell us what meal prepping entails and maybe outline the typical meal prep process? What does that look like?
Yeah, so meal prepping is basically the practice of preparing food prior to the time that you're actually going to eat it. So maybe like preparing meals at the over the weekend for you to eat during the week. It's going to look different for each person. There's not like a standard what is meal prep. There is what gets a lot of clicks online. So there's like on social media, there's what will show up in your algorithm, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to match that energy in order to meal prep yourself. So for person A, it might be making 21 meals a week to eat that they're not doing any cooking during the week. And then for person B, maybe it's just breakfast or it's just lunch or just prepping the ingredients versus actually cooking the meal from start to finish.
So yeah, thank you. I think that puts it into a good perspective that it's like not one size fits all. And like I was mentioning, I have thought about meal prepping, but never actually committed to it. But if you look around, especially on social media, you'll see so many people talking about how they're meal prepping and or sharing the meal that they have prepped. Would you say that meal prepping is something for everyone?
Absolutely not. I think that it is definitely a journey of self-awareness that might lead to someone meal prepping. Um, Meal prepping, I think, is can be a strategy for those who would benefit from meal prepping. I know that's not like super specific, but for example, right? So um, I am a dietitian and I talk about food all day, right? And I'm a certified culinary medicine specialist. So I talk about cooking food all day. So it's kind of like someone who's in general surgery going home and watching Grey's Anatomy. It's like not my favorite thing to do during the work week, but I love it on the weekend. So meal prep could be a great strategy for someone like me who doesn't necessarily want to spend the time during the week or the mental capacity during the week. I think that's something that gets a little bit lost. Like, it's not just time that goes into making meals, it's what do you have left after your work day, right? And for some people, cooking is therapeutic. So meal prepping would not be for that person who that's their time to like, okay, like that's their de-stressing time. But if preparing meals adds to your mental load, then doing that work over the weekend is going to decrease your mental load during the week.
Yeah, and I think that actually really resonates with me because that is how I feel sometimes. It does add to your mental load. And I think, well, we might have the best intention when it comes to eating right. Life can definitely get in the way. One of the reasons I debated meal prepping was to essentially get more time back on those busier days, especially like the work day, the middle of the week and stuff like that. This way I could spend more time doing things I wanted to do after work rather than spending so much time every night cooking or like half the battle deciding what to cook, at least for me. And for me, it seems like time is one of the main reasons why I would want to meal prep. But I was wondering if there are any other reasons why someone might choose to do meal prepping? So besides saving the time, Amy, what are some other benefits that meal prepping can offer to us?
Um, so kind of like you were just saying, we were in connecting it back to, my last answer with mental load. Deciding what to cook, that is um, an area of self-awareness that I think comes from an individual embarking on like a mindfulness journey. So meal prepping takes that think work out. You are deciding um, what you're going to eat when you're in a moment of mental clarity versus when you're in a moment of survival mode because your workday was stressful or you have 18 other things happening and you're behind on laundry and life is hectic. So, kind of having a plan in place is a strategy there. So, what that looks like for me might be different for you, right? So, meal prepping can be deciding what you're going to have, buying your ingredients, uh, getting them prepared to cook, cooking them, and then consuming them during the week. Or it could just be making a plan and buying the ingredients and separating them, making it easy for yourself. Like I know from personal experience when I do meal prepping, if I cook from start to finish, I usually don't make it to the end of the week, if that makes sense. I prefer to have my meal on the fresher side. I'm not like a huge, I want to eat the same thing every day. That's just not really how I like to do that. So prepping my
Mhm.
ingredients, like just cutting my onions, cutting my peppers, making it so that you kind of have like Chipotle style
Yeah.
food in your fridge where you can just like pull like Subway or whatever, and just pull the ingredients out. And if you think about it that way, like what makes sense for you? That way you might not need to do dishes every night to that extent where you're washing a cutting board and knife and all your cooking ingredient or cooking equipment. Maybe it's just the cooking equipment. You turn on the stove, put the meal together, and go. Maybe
Mhm.
it's something like just grabbing, a container and throwing everything in there that you're going to dump in your crock pot in the morning, and then you go. Right. So it doesn't need to be like one size fits all.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great point that there's so many different avenues you could take with meal prepping. And I think one area that I'd like to focus a little bit more on is the relationship of meal prepping and healthy eating. So just because I take the time to prep some things ahead of time, does that truly equate to improving my nutritional intake? So my question for you would be, would you say that meal prepping is more of a strategy to improve nutrition? And if so, how can meal prepping help us reach our nutrition and our dietary goals?
I think with intention, it can be a strategy to improve your nutrition, but it's not automatically a strategy to improve your nutrition because you can meal prep, craft macaroni and cheese, and you can meal prep, you know, Chef Boyardee.
Right.
So
Right.
uh, the thing is, when you're making your plan, you want to make sure that your plan is nutritionally balanced, whether you're cooking on Sunday or cooking on Tuesday, what have you. Um, you would want that balance to be, or that nutrition to be balanced. So, what is balanced nutrition? It would be a fiber containing carbohydrate, like fruits and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, a healthy protein, like lean land animal protein, like beef and chicken and turkey, or, eggs, low fat dairy, legumes, and then a healthy fat like olive oil, avocado, fruit, nut, fit, or excuse me, nuts, fish, and then lots of vegetables. So as long as what's going into your meal prep is nutritionally balanced, then you know, your diet will be nutritionally balanced if you eat it. I think
Hmm.
that sometimes we start these grandiose journeys, and like I said, what you cook on Sunday might not be very appetizing by Friday. Um, so, it has to actually get in your body to be beneficial. So
Right.
when you're making your plan, make sure it's nutritionally balanced, make sure it's something you actually like, not just what the social media influencers are doing. So if that doesn't really excite you, you're not going to eat it. And then really making sure you're emphasizing variety. If you eat brown rice, grilled chicken, and broccoli every day, you're not going to have the variety of your colorful plate that's going to give you all the different vitamins and minerals. You're going to be eating the same thing every day.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think it kind of brings me to my next point of uh we have this stereotypical thought of it's the same thing every day. But as we plan our meals out, we may be making more conscious decisions to eat healthier, right? And it may take away that temptation to grab those convenient foods or those fast foods that do lack those nutrients we need. I feel like often the go-to meal prep that you hear of, at least for me, like I always see chicken, uh, brown rice or regular rice, and broccoli. Like I always see that together, which seems good, but I feel like that definitely doesn't appeal to everyone, of course. Is that the kind of meal we should be looking to prep? Or another question, how do we build a healthy meal to prep?
Yeah, so just making sure it's balanced and making sure you actually like
Right.
it is really important.
Yeah.
So, like if you're gonna go about this journey, one strategy would be like cutting up a bunch of different vegetables and putting them on a sheet pan and roasting them all. So on Monday, you have roasted peppers. On Tuesday, you have roasted carrots. On Wednesday, you have roasted eggplant, whatever. So that way, you're getting more variety in your diet. So it does not have to be chicken, rice, and broccoli, right? It can be whatever suits you. And just really having that variety is important. Um, and then realizing like you don't actually have to cook to meal prep, right? You can do stuff like sandwiches and salads and all the stuff that you like, just swapping out more health promoting ingredients. So if your typical lunch is a peanut butter and jelly on white bread with like Jif peanut butter and jelly, could you switch that to 100% whole wheat bread, peanut butter that's just peanuts, and keep the jelly or do banana, right? Something like that, to
Mhm.
make those simple swaps so it doesn't have to be what you're seeing online.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. And I think the grocery store also, that's where we get our ingredients, right? It can be a tricky place to navigate. I feel like I spend a lot of time going to the grocery store. Sometimes I dread it. I do. Half the time I feel like I'm forgetting certain ingredients. Like I wanted to make this meal and now I forgot like half the ingredients. The other half of the time I feel like I'm picking up too much and I'm overspending, unfortunately. But grocery shopping seems to be one of the first uh, critical steps to meal prepping. What are some tips for maybe navigating the grocery store or navigating grocery shopping and making that shopping process just a little bit less daunting?
Definitely having a list and sticking to it, and building your list off of what you're actually going to eat. Um, and then like little things like never shop hungry. Be mindful of the really strategic marketing and placement of things in the grocery store, like the end caps. Um, I love to just like build my cart online before I even go. Um, Granted, I am a huge nerd when it comes to nutrition. So, but one thing that's actually really helped me to your point of budget is grocery pickup because you build your cart online and then you go and you just pick it up. You're not even entering the grocery store. So you're less likely to be tempted by the cheese balls on the end cap,
Yeah.
or, you know, the novel products. That's a huge thing that gets me every time. It's like, what is this? I know my patients are going to ask me about it. Should I try it? Like, and that's not always great for the budget. So doing that grocery pickup is a great way to kind of lessen the time. And like you were saying, you know, spending a lot of time inside the grocery store is not the best strategy. Making those decisions before you go. So grocery technology has been like this wild improvement where they have apps and the nutrition information is on the apps, on their website. So you can look at that stuff and make your choices before you even get there. Kind of like when you go to a restaurant, a great, you know, suggestion is looking at the menu and making your choice before you go. That way you're not influenced by the smells and the sights and the sounds of the sizzling fajita thing as it
Yeah.
walks by your table. So just kind of eliminating some of those confounding variables that make you overspend, or, you know, get
Yeah.
attracted to other things that you wouldn't normally, you know, spend money on for your health goals.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point because I do always check the menu before I go out to eat, and I literally pick what I want. But maybe doing that in the grocery store setting, it's just another way of thinking. So I think that's very interesting. And okay, let's say now we're home from the grocery store, or we picked up our groceries if we're taking that more digital method. I'm ready to start physically the process of physically meal prepping, cooking, making my food. I think it's quite common to think that sometimes meal prepping can take forever, or maybe it takes up your whole time with or your whole day, right? Planning, uh, cooking, preparing, storing, the cleaning of everything. So, how long would you say meal prepping usually takes? And what are some tips to make meal prepping maybe more fun or enjoyable, maybe for those who even don't like to typically cook?
Yeah, so I would recommend selecting cross equipment strategy. So if you're making, like I said, roasted vegetables, like all of those vegetables are going to be roasted at the same time. Well, at the same time, you can be baking like chicken or black meat burgers, like utilizing your oven to its full capacity. Same thing with like when you're prepping your ingredients, if your multiple recipes are calling for an onion, you know, buying that big honking onion so that you can cut it all up at once and it goes to a bunch of different recipes. But then really using like the non-cooking recipes as well. So it's not very labor intensive, like just dropping, you know, a half a cup of oatmeal in a couple jars, putting the liquid in, throwing some fruit. There you have overnight oats. You're not cooking that, you're just sticking it in the fridge. Um, and then it's just really important too with anything, not just cooking, that if you know that it's a healthy habit that you want to motivate yourself to do, but you don't love doing it. This idea of coupling. So coupling your prep time with your favorite podcast, or your favorite TV show, or your favorite playlist, where you are listening or watching something that you love to do, a really highly rewarding activity with your less rewarding activity. It kind of motivates you to do that a little bit more, as long as you have that discipline to not listen to the podcast unless you're prepping.
Yeah, no, that's a really great suggestion to bring up. I think that's like really unique to bring up. So thank you. And I think it definitely make it more enjoyable if you're listening to like your favorite podcast, or if you have your phone and your maybe your favorite show or something's there. So good suggestion. And I think in preparing for today's webisode, I read that an important part of meal prepping is about how you're storing the food once it is done and staying organized to avoid any spoilage. I can also imagine that some people might get bored eating the same thing all week. So freezing food is maybe something to consider as well. Is there anything we should be doing to be mindful of storage and also to reduce that spoilage or waste?
Yeah, I mean, this was the thing that really um that was the biggest barrier for me for meal prepping, especially for the whole week. Really where I got to be the most successful is prepping my ingredients or prepping, like I said, the crock pot meals so that I was eating fresh food every day. But it is important to recognize the signs of spoilage with, like sight, smell, any type of uh, bloating in the packaging where like gas is being released from the bacteria. But also just like really emphasizing that it's going to look different for every person. So what works in my household is that freezing, you know, strategy where I'm cooking a lot of food. I'll usually double a recipe and then freeze it and then also eating leftovers from the night before or 2 nights later eating those leftovers, and then I'm really only cooking 3 times a week, so my prep is only for 3 meals instead of you know cooking 21 meals to get that variety and spending all of that time on the weekend. There's different strategies and you really just need to do what works for you.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think I have some friends who have also tried different meal prepping services where it comes right to your house. So it seems to take that planning process out, maybe provide even more convenience. I just wanted to get your thoughts. What are your thoughts on meal prepping services like that?
To be honest, they're really not my favorite because they do charge you for the service, right? So while you're not
Yeah.
doing the grocery shopping, they're kind of charging you for that. So they can be on the pricier side. They usually don't allow you to have leftovers, like it's just enough for your,
Right.
1 to 2 servings. Um, and you do lose control over the quality of the ingredient and the ingredient choices, if that makes sense. So even if you're
Mhm.
making
Yeah.
a healthy meal, maybe one of the ingredients is not the most nutritionally optimal. And when I say like quality, I don't mean going to a really fancy grocery store to get that really fancy ingredient. I mean high nutrition quality. If that
Mhm.
kind of answers your question there.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. Yeah, sometimes I think we confuse the convenience, but there also might be other stuff that might be lacking or you might be getting charged for. And for those of us who might want to give meal prepping a try and we're interested in learning even more about healthy eating or meal prepping, of course, we know the internet can definitely be a helpful resource, but we also know that there's so much information out there. Do you have any helpful resources around healthy eating or meal prepping that you can share with us today?
Yeah, so culinary medicine classes at Geisinger. We have an
Awesome. Yeah.
amazing program. It's with me. It's a 4-week program. It's completely free of cost. We have it in person in Selinsgrove in my beautiful teaching kitchen. But we also have classes online. So you can find those classes at geisinger.org/cooking. Um, but another thing that you could do is, looking up, especially from those like meal prepping services, what is their menu to get ideas, or looking for uh, really evidence-based, reputable resources for recipes. So things like the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association. Even if you don't have heart disease or diabetes, you can benefit from healthy recipes. Same thing, with the eatright.org, which is the American Academy of Nutrition Dietetics. Um, culinarymedicine.org has thousands of recipes that you can try. So just getting recipe ideas from those places will allow you to kind of have a little bit more inspiration. And then really just thinking about what are your, um, you know, what's going to work for you? What's your current habit? And how can I make the really small but substantial changes that are going to, make a really big difference in my life? I think sometimes when we talk about healthy eating, we're at 0 and we want to get to 100, and that's not realistic. Like, how can we make Thanksgiving healthy? Well, we have Thanksgiving once a year. So it's not going to be super impactful to make Thanksgiving healthy. But if you're
Right.
eating yogurt every day, switching to a healthier version of your yogurt is going to make a really substantial change in your life.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. And I think today, I think we could probably all agree on this call that we've learned a lot in this time that we had you, Amy. And I know for that I have a better understanding of meal prepping, what it entails, some tips, some different resources, like you were saying, that were really interesting. Just as a takeaway, since we are near time, what would your top 3 tips be around meal prepping or getting started?
First, be honest with yourself. Is this process the best for me, or is it just trendy? Right? Is this actually going to bring a benefit to my healthy eating, or is this going to stress me out even more? Right? Is this going to be a nice blueprint for my meal planning, or am I going to not actually eat it by the end of the week and end up getting takeout anyway? And then, create a plan. Make sure that the plan is balanced. Utilize things like one pot meals, non-cook menu items, repurpose your ingredients and leftovers. If you make grilled chicken on Monday, use that for a sandwich or a salad the next day. Then you don't have to cook again. Freeze your leftovers. And then always, always, always have a healthy plan B, because life will happen, right? So either you do not feel like it, you are so stressed out, something happened, your dog got sick, you cannot meal prep. Having healthy pantry items like 100% whole wheat bread and a can of tuna and maybe some yogurt and vegetables and make like a nice tuna salad, great. It does not need to be this fancy schmancy crazy meal prepping phenomenon that you see online. You
Yeah.
just need to get the nutrients in your body.
Yeah. Those are great tips. And thank you so much, Amy, for being a speaker. Really great to have this conversation with you. I definitely found a lot of it relatable, useful. I'm excited to incorporate some of your tips as well. So thank you so much. I will pause here. If anybody has any questions, if you want to plug anything into the Q&A feature of this, feel free to. I'll pause here, see if anything comes through. However, if you do end up sending a question through and we don't get to it, I can always get you an answer uh, post this webisode. I could connect with Amy for an answer. So I'll just pause, give it a couple seconds here. Let's see anything coming through. So I think we're safe to conclude today then. So thank you again, Amy. It definitely was a great website, great discussion. Um, if you have any questions, feel free to plug them in and we will definitely get back to them. However, we do have a webisode in April, so next month, talking about menopause. So it's called Moving Through Menopause. So we have a great speaker for that as well. So don't forget to tune into that if you are interested. But once again, thank you, Amy, and everyone have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for